It is not the time to procrastinate. It is time to make sure that you have food, water, energy, security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter, and you've got that covered. These are desperate times. You don't want to be in the 97% of people that end up in abject poverty because you couldn't believe that this could possibly not happen. So you prepare for the worst and you hope for the best. If I don't need my bug out house for anything other than it's a wonderful place for my family and I to spend quality time together, completely out of the rat race, breathing healthy air. So what if I have more food than I need? Means I can share with a lot more people. It also means I'm eating a whole lot healthier than I would if I were buying everything at the grocery store, even organic. So getting into position to sustain your standard of living is not a horrible place to be, regardless of the outcome, but the handwriting is on the wall. It should be crystal clear to everybody that the world is changing and you want to be in a position to be good no matter what that change brings. A derivative implosion could really bring everything to a standstill. Everything. So this could definitely be the latest test for the derivative market. And I'm going to tell you, you want to be in a position before that happens, before this gets tested. This will be nastier than I can even let you know. This will topple the derivative market. Now, whether or not it'll be Russia or they'll manage to call it not a default or there'll be some workaround, I don't know. We'll wait and we'll find out. They've surprised me before, so I'm not going to tell you that it's definitive. But what I can tell you is we live in an interconnected world. And what we're really seeing here is a deglobalization from that world. And this is not an easy thing to happen. And it's not, it jeopardizes your very standard of living. It jeopardizes that. And it's in jeopardy anyway. So this could just justify it. It could just justify shifting into a completely new system. So if Europe, now that energy is on the table for sanctions, if Europe actually did sanction Russian gas and oil, that would send the continent into an immediate recession. Factories would have to shut. Prices would even skyrocket above that. This is the same kind of position that the U.S. used to retain its status as the world reserve currency back in the 70s. And remember, in 1969, the IMF created the SDR, their special drawing rights, to take over from the dollar the position of the world reserve currency. But then Henry Kissinger, went and created the petrodollar. And so since the 60s and 70s, we've retained that position as the world reserve currency. Not so much. There are a number of reserve currencies. We're still the dominant one, but that's declining. And if this actually does come to pass, then it's going to hearken that demise of the U.S. dollar's status. It'll bring it about much more quickly. All of the derivatives, so those are those big bets against Russian debt, right? So they avoided exploding, which I think is a really interesting thing. And Russia was able to pay off a whole bunch, or repurchase, I should say, a whole bunch of that debt, not all of it, by paying in rubles, which is also quite interesting. But let's put a little more risk in there, because this is really, I mean, I said it before, I'll say it again. It is a derivative implosion that will be far too large for any central bank or even central banks working together to overcome. Because, look, just in the transition that have to be completed by the end of this year, going into 2023, remember, all of those derivative contracts that are based on the LIBOR that have to change, 610 trillion notional, which does not reflect the value at risk. It only reflects the current market value that traders have agreed to. Half of Russia's 20 richest billionaires are not sanctioned, only half. But this is where it gets interesting for me. The list of who's blocked and who's not reveals a patchwork pattern of cross-border penalties, a patchwork pattern, so it's kind of easy to go through that patchwork, and has spared many Russians with business interests in key global markets. So you see, what you own can make a difference. Now, I'm not suggesting that you be a Russian oligarch, but there is something that anybody can own and help to avoid that, meaning, you know, physical gold and also physical silver outside of the system, private, etc. We get blinded by numbers, but they're just numbers. The reason why gold and silver has been money for thousands and thousands of years through these kinds of crises and more is because it has the broadest base of buyer and the greatest level of utility. So you always have demand. But when you're looking at anything that's dollar denominated or euro denominated, fiat money denominated, it only has use in one area. And when that demand goes away, then there's no demand. It's not worth anything. So you could have 10 trillion, but if you can only convert it into dollars, you have zero. 10 trillion times zero is zero. This is getting really, 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 really dicey and really dangerous. Really, really dangerous. Just because you can't see it does not mean it's not happening. Ignorance does not make you immune. It just leaves you vulnerable.